So let me begin with my story. I have progressive multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed in 2000 just as I moved here to Iowa City. And I began taking Copaxone. I was told I'd have a mild disease, everything would work well. And if I could not have any acute relapses, things would go very well. And I did not have any acute relapses, but I gradually got worse anyway. By 2003, I needed a cane. Later that year, I needed a scooter, and then shortly thereafter, a tilt-recline wheelchair. My back was so weak I could not sit upright in a regular chair. I took Novantrone, which is chemotherapy, and got to experience the wonders of chemotherapy-related vomiting. Neutropenia was very humbling. And eventually I decided that I was not getting much benefit, and it was certainly too toxic to continue. I then started Tysabri when that became available, but that was pulled from the market when people started dying from it, and was switched to Cellcept. I continued to have a steady sense of decline. That was when I went back to reading the medical literature night after night, and finally decided that mitochondria were a key player in MS, and then began researching what were the nutrients that I could take that would better support my mitochondria. I began taking coenzyme Q, B vitamins, lipoic acid, and carnitine, and the speed of my descent slowed, so it flattened out. I was very, very grateful, although it was still declining. In the summer of 2007, I could walk short distances with 2 canes. I was still working full-time, and my partner and I were talking about what changes would have to make in the house to bring the scooter into my home, because while I could walk around in the morning, it was very difficult to walk even very short distances in the evening. That was when I became aware of, next, let's get on and get pictures of me in the wheelchair. There we go. A picture, that was when I became aware of a study using neuroelectrical stimulation in people who are paralyzed, and I decided maybe that could help folks with MS. I checked the literature, no one had ever done it in MS, but I convinced my physical therapist to let me have a try, and I began electrical stim, and he was right, it hurts a lot, but it was not fatiguing. I also at that time, I decided that I was going to relearn that first year of medical school, so I relearned my biochemistry, my cellular physiology, my neurophysiology, and made this wonderful list of all the substrates or building blocks that my brain needed to make myelin, make neurotransmitters, and for my mitochondria to work. And then I created this list of nutrients. I would go to my medical text, and I thought, okay, I'll see what I need to eat. Oh, that wasn't helpful. Then I went to my nutrition text to see what I need to eat. Well, they were talking about cholesterol and protein and sodium. They weren't talking about those substrates. So then I went to UpToDate and a few more references, couldn't find anything, and then realized I had to research this on my own. Several more months went by, but I did finally figure out the foods that held these nutrients, and began on the 1st of January this new diet, which then led to rapid gains in strength. It was striking. Week by week, I was stronger. So by the end of January, I was walking between exam rooms. I was walking to clinic. By the end of March, I quit using the scooter entirely. On May, I got on my bike for the first time in 6 years. My kids were terrified. They were afraid I was going to crash and do something terrible, but I didn't. I biked around the block. I was tired after going around the block, but very excited. Then in the fall, I biked 18 miles on the Courage Ride bike tour, walked up only one hill, which astounded me even. And now I bike 5 miles to work twice a day. Or I bike to work and back to home. Okay, so next slide, please.
Wait a minute, which way is better? Is it better this?
Down. Yeah. There we go. We are good. Okay. Next one, please. Okay. So I was completely transformed in how I see disease and health as I experienced this transformation, largely thanks to the change in nutrition, has totally changed how I see disease and health, and I began incorporating these nutritional concepts in my practice. At the VA, I said I would really like to work in the traumatic brain injury clinic because I could take advantage of my interest in nutrition and in brain physiology to help these guys. And so I used these concepts for them with wonderful results. I also use these concepts in my primary care practice where I see internal medicine type problems, diabetes, arthritis, heart failure, high blood pressure. We have many people with severe psychiatric disorders in the VA, both in primary care and in the traumatic brain injury clinic. We have folks with depression, bipolar, substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, and all these folks are significantly helped with these nutritional interventions. And then these same nutritional interventions I talk about are very helpful for Parkinson's, very helpful for migraines, tension headaches, chronic headaches. And there's a reason to think that they would be helpful in slowing the damage from Huntington's and ALS. And they certainly slow the damage for dementia. Next slide, please. Okay. I covered this briefly last time, but I want to highlight it again. There's this wonderful work that was done by Weston Price, who was a dentist from the 1930s. He had, in his practice, kids come in with rotten, crooked teeth, and he wanted to know why the dental health was so bad. He assembled a multidisciplinary team and went out to look at 14 different peoples around the world. He took soil scientists, nutritionists, ethnographers, dentists, physicians, mental health professionals. And he did physical exams, dental exams, mental health assessments, medical histories, and lots of photographs. He has photographs of families whose kids were born to when both parents were eating a primitive diet, and then who later in life the later kids were born eating a Western diet. Then he analyzed the results according to what was the diet that was being eaten at the time. Was it a primitive diet? Was it first generation Western diet, second generation Western diet? And what he saw was the primitive diets had straight teeth, no cavities, less than 1 per thousand, very good mental health stability, essentially no high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, no arthritis, good physical fitness. First generation Western diet had crooked teeth and about 50% cavity rate, and the mental fitness declined and the physical fitness declined. There was more high blood pressure, diabetes, and arthritis. Yes. Second generation, the teeth were now every bit as crooked and rotten as they were in his practice back in the States. And the mental fitness had declined further, the physical fitness had declined further, and of course there was a higher rate of high blood pressure, diabetes, and arthritis. His conclusion was, in the absence of good nutrition, deterioration of the species is rapid. And he predicted that the health of the primitive peoples would seriously decline as their diets became westernized. He also predicted a rapid explosion in the rate of diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, arthritis, and other chronic disease, which of course all of that has come to pass. Next slide. Now, the reason for all of this, we now know is epigenetics. That's the big term for the fact that the genes turn on in response to the local environment. That is, the food that you eat and the toxins you're exposed to will turn your genes on and off. So if I have a diet that's very high in sugar, high in carbohydrates, I will have about 65 genes turn on that rev up inflammation. The inflammation molecules will rev up my arthritis, will rev up all of my diseases that have an inflammatory component, which, by the way, is essentially all of our chronic diseases. high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, depression, Parkinson's, MS, they all have a large inflammatory component. If, on the other hand, I eat a diet that is rich in non-starchy vegetables, green leaves, whole fruits, and a protein source, whatever protein source that you want, beans and rice, or fish, meat, poultry, I turn on 72 genes that down-regulate those inflammation molecules and are very healing. So let me repeat that. I eat a diet like the standard American diet, high in carbs. I rev up 65 genes that will drive my chronic disease. Or I eat a diet that's rich in green leaves, whole fruits, and protein source. I turn on a diet that is very healing and down-regulates all those inflammation molecules. Okay, and so based on that, one can certainly make the case that it's not, when you read the paper that we're finding all these genes linked with diabetes, multiple sclerosis, asthma, I have a lot of heartburn with that because it doesn't acknowledge that's not so much the DNA that's the problem. It's the epigenetics that are turning the genes on that is the problem. For example, you have corn. Well, we're in Iowa. We all know corn. You take a bag of seed corn, you split it in two, plant half of it in good black Iowa dirt, fertilize it. The other half you put on a trash heap. You come back in the fall to make your harvest. The black dirt Iowa corn's going to have a bumper crop, whatever it is these days, 180 bushels an acre or so. You go to the trash heap corn, what are you going to see? Yellow, stunted corn, full of brown fungus, smut kind of stuff. You'll hardly find any kernels, ears of corn whatsoever. It was the same DNA in both fields. It's not the DNA that's the problem. The DNA that you have is not the problem. That's not why we have this epidemic of disease in America. Mutations don't happen that fast. It's the epigenetics that is turning our perfectly fine DNA into trouble. Next slide, please. Okay. Our brains have 1 billion cells in them with about 1 trillion connections. And within those billions of cells with trillions of connections are trillions of chemical reactions that are needing to happen simultaneously every instant of your life. And all those chemical reactions are dependent on having the correct substrates or building blocks for them to happen. And if the correct building blocks aren't there, either the reaction doesn't happen or the wrong thing gets made because it has to substitute using the parts that it has. And in general, when a substitution happens, the outcome is rarely better. More often than not, it's less effective. So all of these trillions of reactions that we have are dependent on the amino acids, minerals, vitamins, and other phytonutrients, the vast majority of which are essential. That is, we have to eat them. We are not plants, folks. We have to eat most of the things that we use in our body. We can make a few from the things that we eat, but the vast majority of the compounds that we use for our reactions are from things that we have to eat, and we're not eating them. Okay, so if you look at if you do a nutritional history, the vast majority of Americans no longer eat the recommended daily allowance, which is not even the requirements for optimal health. It's simply the requirements or the average of what people were eating back in the 1930s. And I will tell you, in the 1930s, people were still eating a lot more fruits and vegetables than we are today. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in our brains, we rely on mitochondria. The mitochondria generates the energy for your brain cells to do the work of living. Without mitochondria and without oxygen, your brain dies very quickly. Seconds, minutes. Bingo. You die. There are parts of our bodies that can get by without mitochondria for a little while. But the reality is our brains are so dependent on mitochondria and oxygen that if either one's not around doing a good job, the brain will begin to die. If the mitochondria is only marginally effective, then the brain itself becomes marginally effective. And well, it's enough on that one. Let's take the next slide. Okay, so this is the biochemistry. My med students should just be eating this stuff up, right? Okay, now the question for you guys is, so NADH, FADH, do you know what you have to eat so you can make NADH and FADH? Okay, so I'll help you out. I'll put you out of your misery. FADH is made from riboflavin, or B2. NADH is made from niacinamide, or B3. And then the other question I can put on the spot is, do you have any idea what you have to eat to get those? Kale. When in doubt, I'll tell you, when in doubt, answer kale. Okay? When in doubt, answer kale. You'll almost always be right. So the B vitamins are in green leaves. And most of us don't eat nearly enough green leaves. Most of America is very short on our B vitamins. You also need to have ubiquinone and lipoic acid and antioxidants for the mitochondria to work really well. The ubiquinone and lipoic acid are also in the green leaves, and they will be in organ meats, heart, tongue, gizzard, liver, sweetbreads, all those things that our great-grandmothers knew to eat, but we somehow forgot. And the antioxidants are the bright colors. Go on next. Just another version of the same thing. Having a healthy mitochondria or not having a healthy mitochondria is the difference between getting 2 miles to the gallon versus 38 miles to the gallon. And in the brain cell, we have hundreds, thousands of mitochondria per brain cell. So it's the difference between being a snail and a jetliner. Okay, next. Okay, so in addition to making energy, the brain cell will have to wire itself from one cell to the other. Those are called the axons and dendrites. The wiring has to be well insulated so the thoughts can flow smoothly from brain cell to brain cell. If you took the insulation off the wiring in your house, you would get a house fire. We all understand that. If you take the insulation off the wiring in your brain, you get a brain fire or a thought fire. And so you have brain fog, problems with memory, attention, irritability, difficulty controlling impulses. You're much more likely, if Joe says something annoying, I'll punch him out rather than remember that he's my boss, and you don't punch out your boss. So myelin is very important to keep your thoughts flowing smoothly and in order. ATP is the energy that the mitochondria generates. And ATP is what is the currency of life. Pardon? Adenosine triphosphate. So the wiring, the dendrite and axons, the insulation is called myelin. And in MS, myelin is what's destroyed. In many of the dementing illnesses, myelin is lost as well. And the vast majority of Americans do not eat enough omega-3s, nor do we eat enough the B vitamins to make that myelin. Then, if your brain has plenty of ATP, so your mitochondria are working well, and it's well wired, so you have plenty of myelin, for brain cell A to talk to brain cell B, it has to secrete a special molecule called a neurotransmitter. Now, the neurotransmitters get made from the amino acids that are brought to it in the bloodstream. Once again, it's from stuff you eat. If you aren't eating the appropriate proteins and able to digest them to bring in the amino acids that you need, you're going to have a hard time making neurotransmitters. One of the neurotransmitters that are particularly low in people with MS is called GABA, G-A-B-A. We also know that we now are thinking that GABA is low in people who have mental health diseases, bipolar, depression, attention deficit. It's low in people who have chronic pain, fibromyalgia. And making GABA is dependent on sulfur. So you need to have amino acids with sulfur in them. So those are things like taurine, methionine, and cysteine. And the reality is, oh, my medical students, are you guys remembering some of these? All right. We aren't eating much sulfur anymore. It's in seafood and in green leaves, and I'll go over that in more detail. But the vast majority of Americans have a diet that's deficient in sulfur. So we have diets that are deficient in the building blocks for our mitochondria. We have a diet deficient in the building blocks for our myelin. And we have a diet deficient in the building blocks for our neurotransmitters. And we wonder why our children have so much learning disabilities, so much depression, so much problems with aggression and behavior problems. We are making their brains sick because we are letting them eat a diet that does not give them the nutrients for their brains to work. But you won't. You'll be on the top of your class here. Okay, next slide. Okay, so in addition to making energy, making that adenosine triphosphate, the mitochondria will convert the glucose to the ATP so they can do the work of living, but they also purify the cell, get rid of the toxins. You see, all the food that we eat, much of the food we eat now has been treated with pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers. The meat gets a variety of antibiotics, gets a variety of hormones. The indoor environments have a variety of cleaning solvents on them and building pest control kinds of things. We have perfumes in our soap. We are exposed to hundreds of chemicals every day. Even trying to go organic, you're still exposed to hundreds of chemicals every day. And your mitochondria are going to have to help you get rid of them. So again, you want to have healthy mitochondria so they can process and get rid of the trash. Okay. Now, if your mitochondria, as they are making energy and getting rid of trash, it's a chemical plant. And all chemical plants have a little bit of trash of their own at the end. Even our beloved mitochondria. As much as I love them, they'll make some trash too. Now, if I have a diet rich in antioxidants, my mitochondria can make that little bit of trash. The antioxidants will scoop it up, get rid of it, and it's not a problem. If my diet is poor and I don't have many antioxidants, those free radicals are not scooped up, and they go around and start hurting my mitochondria, or they go to the nucleus and hurt my DNA. Either way, either my cell dies early and then I have premature aging, because I only have so many divisions for each one of my cells, and then they get to the end of the line. Or, worse yet, my cell says, I'm Superwoman. I don't have to die. And we call that cancer. Next. Okay, so let's talk about building blocks and what you need to eat to get them. The B vitamins, coenzyme Q, the building blocks to have happy mitochondria. Nutritional yeast, wonderful. It's a great powerhouse of B vitamins, ubiquinone, and minerals. Great stuff. A tablespoon or two every day, very good. Great source of protein, great source of B vitamins. Mushrooms, great source of B vitamins. Dark greens. And we have...
Would you bring across some mushrooms with you, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Are they up here? Here we go. So we have some mushrooms. You want to give me the light so I can show off some of the food here?
Yeah.
And I've got collard greens. We have some kale, bok choy, purple kale.
This is organic and locally grown by Derek Roller right down the street. I'll pass that around.
Oh, marvelous. Why don't you pass off?
What's this?
Those are the collards. Wonderful.
And how do you eat your collards?
Any way that I can.
And that's bok choy?
And I personally love these as salads. I mince these, and I've got some recipes in my ebook, but I mince them. We'll get to that. We'll come back to it.
The darker green, the better?
The darker the green, the better. It has more chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is very similar, chloroplasts are very similar to mitochondria, which is why they are so good for us. Okay, so what was that? Chlorophyll is very similar to hemoglobin, but it has magnesium in it. And the chlorophyll lives in the chloroplast, which is a little part of the cell, very much like the mitochondria in our cells. Very similar structures, which is why plants that are packed with their chloroplast are so good for our mitochondria. Follow? As I go along, we'll pick up more of these other foods, and I'll talk with them as we come along. Okay? Organ meats, wonderfully good for you, packed with B vitamins. With my caveat, don't overcook them. You want them as rare as you can personally stomach to eat them. You'll have much more of your B vitamins and the organ meats, heart, tongue, gizzards, liver, slow cook.
What about the cholesterol in the liver and
The cholesterol,
and also,
I'm going to, we'll come back to that at the very end. And I will make the caveat that from my perspective, the micronutrient content of your diet is vastly more important than the total cholesterol content. If you eat a diet rich in the micronutrients, minimize your grains, I would say that you'll not have to worry about the total cholesterol content of your diet. Your cholesterol will fall. Yes, you'll hear more about that too. Now, forgive me, I'm not going to take any more questions because I want to get through all of this. We will have you write out your questions, and I will answer the questions at the end. If we take questions as we go, I'm not going to be able to get through everything. Next slide, please. Myelin. To make myelin, you need to have B vitamins, in particular thiamine, but you also need B12 and B6. For that, greens and mushrooms, nutritional yeast, great source. You need omega-3s. And for that, we're going to recommend fish oil, krill oil is very good, hemp oil, which we have here, flax oil, hemp seeds, and hemp milk are all very good sources of omega-3s. The particular omega-3s that you're looking for are called DHA and EPA, docosahexaenoic acid, and icosapent.
Hello, I'm Bill Nelson, and the developer of the QXCI system. On this page, we have basic nutrition and homeopathy. This is here to help guide you to some of the good foods as well as the nutritional deficiencies of your patient, and also to give you insights into some of the basic homeopathic usages as well as the constitutionals. Keep in mind that the QXCI measures reactivity, so we don't really know if there's deficiency or excess. 80% of the time it is deficiency, maybe even more. But at times there's excess. So if the computer reports that there's a problem with vitamin C, we need to ask the conscious of our patient, do they take large amounts? If they take large amounts of vitamin C, the computer's telling us either they're not absorbing that vitamin C, it's wrong for them, or it might be too large a quantity. The QXCI system measures reactivity. We have to intuit and also work with our own minds and experience to find out about deficiency and excess.
Science and research across Europe now in Futuris. Whether it's a rustic roll handcrafted by a local baker or a loaf leavened in a factory on an industrial scale, Europeans get through 25 million tons of bread each year.
There are so many different types of bread, and they're all good in one way or another. I'm quite interested in how it's made. I'm interested in the taste above all. Maybe I shouldn't be.
European researchers are looking closely at what puts the go into dough. And to improve the quality, they're using machinery more at home in a high-tech science lab than a baker's kitchen. It's 5 a.m. at Krakow's University of Agriculture in Poland. They might look like bakers, but in fact they're specialists in human nutrition. They mix flour, water, fresh yeast and salt in predetermined proportions and leave the dough to ferment for an hour. The researchers want to know how the fermentation process affects glucose levels in the blood of those who eat it. And they have a theory.
We know that the longer the fermentation process, the more alcohol and carbon dioxide is produced in the dough. Both these products are produced by simple sugars, and it's these sugars which are responsible for a high glycemic index in bread. So we reckon that if the dough ferments for longer, the bread will produce less glucose in humans, because the simple sugars will have been transformed into alcohol and gases in the baked bread. So there'll be less sugar to be absorbed by the body. These experiments should help us to confirm that theory.
The bread is baked for 20 minutes at 230 degrees Celsius. Then it's sliced into portions of exactly 111 grams. Before the second part of the experiments begin.
The participants will now eat these rolls and we'll measure the glucose concentration in the blood.
15 guinea pigs, all students at the university, eat the 111 grams of bread. And blood samples are taken at different stages of the digestion process. 4 samples in about an hour and a half. Volunteers think this research is vital to improve the nutritional qualities of the bread of the future.
Bread is widely consumed here in Poland during breakfast and dinner. Everyone knows it's an essential food. That's why it's very important to measure its glycemic index and reduce it, not only for people suffering from type 2 diabetes, but also for those who want to protect themselves against it.
The experiment is just one of a number of elements in a research project aimed at providing EU citizens with better and healthier bread, no matter what the consumer's preference is.
Young people eat a basic kind of bread. Older people look for more nutrition, fiber and grain, a specific sort of bread.
Factory bread? Never. It doesn't keep, it dries out really quickly. It's just no good.
The project is being coordinated from this institute at Nantes in western France.
Does this sound familiar? You grab a mid-morning soda, a sweetened tea at lunch, a frozen coffee drink in the afternoon, and a couple of sodas at dinner. Seems harmless enough. But that many sugary drinks a day can add up to a lot of extra sugar. And all that sugar can bring on serious health problems, including obesity, which causes type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and even some cancers. So don't drink yourself sick. Go with water, seltzer, fat-free milk, or unsweetened teas instead.
About the 10 foods we should not eat. Food number 1,
high-fat luncheon meats. High-fat luncheon meats, that's right.
High-fat luncheon meats.
The University of Southern California, they did a study a few years ago, and they said that children who eat 3 hot dogs a week have 9 times, I'm slowing down, 9 times the risk of leukemia versus children who do not. Now remember, The leading cause of death in children aged 14 and under, other than accidents, is cancer. The leading type of cancer is leukemia. And the University of Southern California says 3 hot dogs a week, 9 times the risk of leukemia. So friends, if you don't hear anything else I say, please feed your children right. We have tremendous resources available to you today which specifically deal with childhood nutrition. Sharon and I have 4 children. We've been married for 25 years. And we've been blessed to have super healthy children, but we make sure that we feed the kids the right food on an ongoing basis because we realize our children's health is our responsibility. It's not their responsibility. You haven't, my 5-year-old doesn't jump in the car and go to the health food store or the junk food store and buy junk food and bring it home. If we bring good food home, they eat good food. We bring bad food home, they have to eat bad.
To diet sodas, Cokes, all that is bad.
Yeah.
What's in them that is so bad?
The aspartame.
Aspartame, and it does what to the body?
It's been linked to brain tumors, brain cancer, seizures, headaches, optic nerve degradation. It causes memory loss. It causes depression. It messes up serotonin levels in the brain. It's unbelievably bad. I can't tell you how bad diet sodas are.
Then you talked about
margarine,
trans fats. Right? Trans fats. Then you talk about shellfish.
That's right.
Which are bad. Then all the cookies and the
junk food.
Junk foods.
High fructose corn syrup. That's right.
And you covered
Number 6 to stay away from is interesting because it's almost in everything. It's MSG, monosodium glutamate. When you look at a lot of, in fact, they had Senate meetings on this a few years ago trying to force the manufacturers to label it because it contains a compound, monosodium glutamate, called glutamic acid. Glutamic acid in neurochemistry is called an excitotoxin. It overstimulates brain cells, gives you terrible headaches when you get food if you're allergic to MSG, and it kills your brain. It actually eats holes in your brain, glutamic acid.
Well, stay with that a second and explain that.
Monosodium glutamate is added as a flavor enhancer.
And it comes in chips.
It comes in chips. And so the government, Chinese food. A lot of times you go to a Chinese restaurant, you need to ask them, do you use MSG in your food? And a lot of them have right on the door, no MSG used. Because there's so many people get really bad headaches from it. If I just get a taste of it, I get a tremendous headache. Because remember, the MSG, the glutamic acid, is an excitotoxin. It eats holes in the brains of the laboratory animals it's tested on.
God.
See, so here's the problem that we run into. People say, well, we're not a laboratory animal. Well, that's true. But the problem is this. Excitotoxins damage neural tissue. We know that. Here's the problem with trying to do a double-blind clinical research study using human beings. You can never get it past the board to get it approved. There's no way we can try to intentionally eat holes in a human being's brain or cause brain cancer in somebody because they won't approve it. They won't do that. And so that's why we have to use the animal studies when these products are so poisonous, they do this. And that's the importance of the animal studies and what they do. Number 7 is chlorine in the water supply. Chlorine and fluoride. Both chlorine and fluoride are deadly poisons. They used chlorine gas in World War I to kill people with. And when we were at Florida State and we were in organic chemistry, if we produced a chemical that released chlorine gas, we'd have to use a vented hood they call a vacuum hood because they didn't want the chlorine getting in the room because you could die from it, one good whiff. And see, we put it in the water to kill bacteria, but we shouldn't put it into our bodies because it kills our bodies too. The same thing with fluoride. Fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum production and it's used as rat poison. So many people don't understand how important it is to maintain your health and to do the right kind of food. In many cases, you can determine the state of a person's health by looking in their medicine cabinet. You can find anti-cough medicines, decongestants, antacids, inhalers, tranquilizers, aspirin, sedatives, painkillers. We have over 30 million people taking the drug Prozac. I told people 20, 25 years ago that Prozac caused children to commit suicide. And nobody believed me. And they thought I was crazy. I said, no, this stuff really messes up serotonin levels. So finally, a couple of years ago, the Food and Drug Administration forced the manufacturers to put a black box warning with the strongest warning you can have on there, stating it causes suicidal behavior in many patients and children. Now, how sad is that? And so here we have a drug that we can use omega-3 fats like cod liver oil, which is one of the best things you can take for moderate to mild forms of depression. It almost can cure everybody with that problem by taking one product. Omega-3 fats, with old-fashioned, all-natural cod liver oil, which we talked about yesterday. I can't mention that we only found one brand that works, but it works very, very well at that. And people don't understand how important it is to put the right nutrients in your brain, put the right nutrients in your body, and you feel and you look good every single day of your life.
Staff at the Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, USA, has helped restore health and hope to scores of people some with life-threatening or supposedly terminal illnesses. The institute was founded by Anne Wigmore, a vegan or follower of an animal-free diet and great visionary and humanitarian who believed that a life of vibrant health is our true birthright. In helping others heal themselves, she followed the philosophy of the famed ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, who said, "Let food be our medicine." Greetings, helpful viewers, and welcome to part 2 of our 2-part program on the Hippocrates Health Institute, featuring an intriguing interview with Dr. Brian Clement, co-director of the Sanctuary for Health. Dr. Clement, a vegan, has graduate degrees in both naturopathic medicine and nutritional science, and has spent over 30 years studying nutrition and natural health care. He has travelled the globe giving lectures and written numerous books about natural healing, including his recent bestseller, Living Food for Optimum Health. We asked Dr. Clement about the types of health conditions that have been successfully cured at the Hippocrates Health Institute.
Every known disease. Of course, we're most notable for all of the people that have healed cancer, and cancer is a frightening disease, but still today, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer. Even though it's not as scary as the name cancer, that's an easy remedy. It's a lifestyle choice to have cardiovascular disease. I'll give you that maybe 2% of people with heart disease have a mechanical problem, but I promise you that 98%, they don't know how to live, they don't know how to eat, and they don't know how to exercise, and they are stressed. That's why they have those diseases. Diabetes, I've never seen a type 2 diabetic not be able to recover. Again, it's a lifestyle choice. Do I want to be diabetes and be out of control and eat and live like everyone else? Or do I not want to be and become a vegan, exercise, get rid of the sugar in my life, even the natural sugars in my life? So you start to look at diseases, things like multiple sclerosis, things like Parkinson's disease. These diseases are all correctable. All you have to do is live properly, starting with your mind, starting with the food, starting with the movement and strengthening of the anatomy of the body.
Dr. Clement next gives us a perspective on some of the types of foods the Institute recommends for optimizing health.
We give green juices and tell people to drink green juices every day. Half of it can be common organic green vegetables that hopefully you get from your garden, or at least the market where they sell organic foods. The other half needs to be sprouts. And the sprouts that are probably the most abundantly important for people with protein are things like pea green sprouts. Same peas that you normally cook and make into this mushy green stuff, you dry and you sprout it, and it grows into a shoot in 6-7 days, and you eat that. It not only has a complete protein profile, but when you sprout it, it's broken down already to essential amino acids. So it goes directly into the human cell without taking the laborious 3, 4, 5 hours to do that. Sunflower green sprouts, the same. University of California, Los Angeles in 1975 called sunflower sprouts the most balanced form of land-based proteins.
Algae, with all its wholesome goodness, can also be a wonderful addition to anyone's diet.
Then, of course, we give algae to people. All of the sea algae are completely filled with essential proteins and essential fatty acids, by the way. Then the freshwater algae, out of all of the plants on the planet Earth, nothing comes close to green and blue-green algae with protein contents. They're 52% for green and 54% of the complete weight, complete proteins. Now, the good news is, if you give an athlete who's trying to build muscle, you don't gain strength from protein. You get that from carbohydrates. Healthy carbohydrates, not bad breads, pasta, and potatoes that break down to sugars, and that's why people get addicted to it. But things like lettuce and things like plant-based foods in their raw state, that's healthy energy. You're going to give them this protein, and what your body utilizes is going to be taken into the cell and developed into muscle.
There are many dangers to the body stemming from meat consumption.
The truth of the matter is, with an animal food consumption, it never leaves. It takes 3 days to pass through the body with chicken and fish and, you know, these poor little hogs that they eat and steer, cows. And that stays in the body for 3 days, festers, leaves behind all the toxins we previously spoke about, and creates an acidity level that goes through the ceiling that starts to literally erode tissue mass of the body, and the bone included.
When we return, Dr. Clement will speak more about the amazing benefits of the raw vegan diet. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Healthy Living and part 2 of our program, featuring our interview with Dr. Brian Clement, co-director of the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida, USA. The philosophy of this institute is that an enzyme-rich, pure vegan diet, accompanied by constructive thinking and non-invasive therapies, are the essential elements for attaining optimal health. The cornerstone of the Institute's renowned detoxification program is eating and learning how to prepare a variety of raw vegan foods. Executive Chef Ken Blue serves up a wide variety of enzyme-rich green drinks, sprouted nuts and seeds, fresh fruits, and a cornucopia of raw vegan entrees for the guests.
We have a class once a week that goes over how to prepare the dishes, and I try and make everyone feel comfortable in being able to take the program home and prepare the foods and follow this program.
After decades of research, Dr. Clement has concluded that a raw vegan diet is best for the human body. He says that such a diet not only leads to a vibrant state of health, but also improves clarity of mind. Dr. Clement discusses some of the many brilliant vegans who have lived over the centuries.
If a person has a really clear reason of why they're here and a passion to fulfill that a vegan diet is just going to naturally be part of what they want. Some of the great thinkers in history became vegans without even consciously thinking about it. You know, the Edisons and the Einsteins of the world were all vegans. In the United States, our great Ben Franklin was a vegan, and Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin King. And all of these people come to a high level of intellect, but at the same point, when you reach that high level of intellect, you consciously start to see how absurd it is to slaughter a creature to sustain life. I mean, you're killing life to sustain life. It doesn't even make sense when you think about it.
Following a vegan lifestyle is becoming a popular trend in the US.
Just before coming here tonight, I was with a gentleman I've known for many years, a restaurateur that opened a restaurant here that became a success practically overnight. It's completely vegan. It's gourmet. It is packed. He said on weekends they can't even get into the place. Why? He said many of these people are meat eaters, but more and more they come, more and more they see.
Do you feel the vegan diet has benefits for the environment?
Major benefits. If you look at taking one steer, now I think the latest statistic is the average person in Europe or North America consumes about a cow and a half or a steer and a half a year. Well, only one steer consumes 50 acres of plants. 50 acres of plants can literally feed people in the perfect, healthy way by the thousands. So every time we eat an animal, like a steer. We're literally taking food out of the mouth of people. In the recent months, we've actually seen some populations in the world triple the cost for grains. And so starvation is becoming more and more prevalent and more rampant. Why? Because they've now put where they could be growing grains, cows, for the affluent nations to be consuming something they shouldn't be consuming to begin with.
Factory farms not only end the lives of countless innocent beings, but also wreak havoc on the environment in terms of enormous amounts of greenhouse gases emitted and other pollutants discharged. Such appalling facilities would not exist if we all switched to eating only plant-based foods.
If you've ever been, which I was, in the cattle raising area of North America, you have to shut the windows even if it's warm outside, because it is a pungent, disgusting smell of bacteria. There is so much feces and so much antibiotics and bacteria and disease in the feces of these animals. And they are polluting the environment. In the state of North Carolina in the United States, it is so polluted because of the raising of hogs there that the rivers and water streams there are 80% highly contaminated and not suited for human consumption anymore. When you do one thing wrong, it has a domino effect. And the day mankind stopped being plant-based eaters and started to consume animals, the domino effect really started. I'm involved with a gentleman who healed himself of stage 4 lymphoma on our program, who has just completed a documentary showing that approximately 40% of greenhouse gases, the biggest concern that all humans should have today, come because we choose to consume animals and use their milk.
Dr. Clement has a powerful message for all of us.
I've been a vegan for about 35 years, and the greatest benefit is that it completely changed the way I feel about myself and everyone else. And I can't think of a single more important act than to becoming a vegan, if you really have any level of consciousness and care for the future.
We salute Dr. Brian Clement and the other staff members at the Hippocrates Health Institute for promoting the wonderful vegan diet, which not only can lead us all to enjoy the best of health, but is also the key to creating a pure, love-filled world. Thank you for joining us on Healthy Living for the conclusion of our two-part series featuring Dr. Brian Clement, co-director of the Hippocrates Health Institute. Coming up next is Science and Spirituality after Noteworthy News here on Supreme Master Television. May inner tranquility always be yours.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/HL.